in case you have to change your plans. Book now at aerlingus.com for a flexible summer break. Offer subject to conditions and availability.
This October, watch the big games every weekend with Sky Sports and Sports Extra half price. This week, it's Man City Arsenal live only on Sky Sports. The Apprentice
the side has shown real character.
Takes on the Master.
Pep Guardiola's Manchester City, history makers.
Get Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports half price for 6 months. Search Sky Sports Sale. New sports customers only. Standard pricing applies after 6 months or if cancelling one element of the bundle. Minimum term and further terms apply.
You ain't shit. I wish I was 50 years younger and I'd kick your ass.
Well, fans can be the harshest critics, you know.
And they often are.
A wife is often the harshest critic of her husband.
I thought I was invincible. That's what you're trained to believe as a sports person.
There was 4 million people in Ireland who knew much more about managing football teams than I did. When it comes to music, I can spoof with the best.
Your sporting career is the best time you'll have, and you know you have to hang on to it for as long as you like because everything else is pretty crappy.
And this is not lies. Stephen Rothschild has never spoken to Jimmy McGuinness in his life.
Now, you're very welcome back to this Saturday's Off the Ball. Neil Treacy here with you until 5 o'clock this evening. It's time now for our Saturday panel and our review of the week. We are streaming right now across all of our social platforms and on the OTB Sports app as well. 53106 to get your text messages into us, or you can tweet us at Off the Ball. Get whatever you want off your chest and we'll hopefully discuss it over the next hour or so, because joining me on this week's panel reviewing the week that was is Chief Sports Writer of the Irish Daily Star, Kieran Cunningham, former Irish basketball manager, captain and sports commentator Timmy McCarthy, as well as former Irish rugby international Alison Miller. Guys, thanks a million for joining me this afternoon. There's a lot to get through, and I think it seems with the week that's been, a lot of it is tinged with some element of COVID-19 to it.
Yeah, definitely. I think COVID restrictions and the high number of cases is really putting sport in doubt. So I think we all have a part to play and get behind all these restrictions. But I think it's difficult for sport, especially there's a lot of talk about the GA and the league games commencing this weekend. So I suppose we just have to wait and see how it all goes.
Before we dive in with all of it as well, Alison, I will just mention as well, good week for you personally, because the World Rugby Awards for the decade were announced during the week as well, and you've been nominated for your very, very famous try against New Zealand back in the 2014 World Cup. That's one of 5 tries nominated for the International Rugby Players Women's 15s Try of the Decade. A nice feeling, is it?
I suppose it's great memories of that day back in Marcoussis when we beat New Zealand. Obviously, it was a team effort. I was the one who finished it off. I probably scored better tries in my time, but I suppose it's not often you score a try against New Zealand to put them out of the World Cup. So, yeah, great memories, up against some tough candidates there and some far more impressive tries. So we'll see how the voting goes.
Come on, sell it to us now. This is your chance to put the word out there. It's a public vote. People can go and vote for it. Tell us, where are we going to vote for it and why should we be voting for it?
You should vote for it because we're Ireland. Obviously, Jamie Heaslip is up for the men's try of the decade as well. So I suppose we're Irish, we're great at getting behind our teams and our players. So I know Irish Rugby have a link on it to the World Rugby site. So that's where you can vote.
Timmy and Kieran, if there's a sport we could excel at, it is hijacking a public vote, isn't it?
Well, from my point of view, we definitely should vote for Alison because, you know, if it is a public vote, it's just numbers. I mean, whether we have enough numbers in this country is another question. But we definitely should be given her the opportunity, you know.
Well, if Ronnie O'Brien could get Times Man of the Century, it was, fringe player Juventus, Bray, I think Alison definitely deserved this.
Certainly does. So we'll get into the action itself, and I think we have to probably start with the GA and the resumption of the inter-county season this weekend. The Allianz League match is taking place. There's quite a few this afternoon. One of those is already underway. They're into the second half already between Wicklow and Antrim in the Allianz Football League Division 4. Wicklow 3-6 to 2 points in front there. And there's a few other games throwing in at 2 o'clock. Monaghan and Kerry in Division 1. Westmeath and Laois in Division 2 as well. And Dublin and Tyrone in the All-Ireland Under-20 Football Championship semi-final. That's also a 2 o'clock start in Limerick. I suppose the pressing news that came overnight, guys, was the Gaelic Players Association yesterday evening. They released the findings of the survey that they put out towards their players this week, just to bring people up to speed on the details if they missed the news round. So there was a 76% response rate from the members in the 48 hours of the survey. 1,695 players responded to it. The key findings were that 52% of inter-county hurlers and footballers want to proceed with the season. 24% of them only will want to play if the implementation of COVID-19 protocols is improved, and 24% of respondents do not want to proceed with the 2020 season. The key findings, though, as well on top of it, were they want stronger testing protocols, stricter compliance and oversight of the protocols in all counties, and then also the use of the safest venues for the games. That includes the location and training facilities as well. So there's plenty to take in from that, guys. I did see a lot of people questioning maybe why were the GPA leaving it this late to put that survey out. But on the flip side of it, so much has changed over the last 2 weeks. If they had done this survey 2-3 weeks ago, the results would probably be a hell of a lot different. And if they were to do the survey probably on Monday morning coming, you could probably get even more different results. So like they had to do it as close to the date as possible. I would suggest anyway.
I would say, Neil, from my point of view, I think it's a fascinating survey because it's 52-48. I know it's 24 and 24, but the 24 who said they would only want to play if things were improved basically means right now they don't want to play, if you take that to its full conclusion. So it's very marginal. I mean, they're obviously not happy. I mean, 48% of them are not happy with either playing or with the current COVID situation. So it's a huge risk. In light of what's happened in the country in the last 2 weeks, I think the resumption of GAA is a huge risk for the players and obviously for the families of the players. The second thing I think is that what about the counties that can't field teams because their players have COVID illnesses? So it's a huge risk and a huge decision, and it's one that I think there's a big question mark about.
I think, I suppose, some of the antics at the county finals haven't helped matters. I think GA players are always seen as heroes for your working full-time jobs and then going back in on their Monday to their employers. But I think there is a concern by employers of these players as well that they have players coming into different workplaces after playing a game, after travelling. So it's not just, I think there's the concerns of employers of these players as well. But I think all those players are in different scenarios. There's going to be younger players living with older parents, some grandparents. I think there's players that are not at risk or they don't have people at risk within their families. But I think it's a really evolving situation with COVID. And I think it's very hard to plan with COVID because you plan a week or two ahead and things change so much. But I think, for those players, they obviously, the percentages are there, those that want to play. But there's so much more than just the playing of the game. It's the logistics of the next day and the workplace that they're going into. And there has been said that some players have said that their employers are not happy with them coming in on a Monday morning, having travelled wherever to the game and, playing a contact game. So there's the other side of that. And is there an anti-GA sentiment kind of creeping in because everyone else you're not allowed to visit your mother or your father, but you can travel across the country. So it's an interesting one with a lot of perspectives to take into account.
Mm-hmm. And Kieran as well, I think another interesting part of it as well is that the players voted, 86% of them voted for that the GPA's National Executive Committee have been now mandated by the players to make any further decisions regarding the continuation of the season. So, if things do change over the next few days and if this weekend doesn't go particularly well, there is a possibility that they don't really have to survey the players all over again. It's going to be with this select committee who can actually make the decision for the players.
Yeah, we've seen developments today, like Leitrim aren't fulfilling their league fixture away to Down. And I would be very curious to see a breakdown of the players' votes because we have seen people who've been vocal, like Michael Quinn in Longford, about his concerns. John Heslin of Westmeath, the footballer, tweeted about during the week. Eddie Brennan, the Laois hurling manager. And what Longford, Westmeath football and Laois hurling have in common is they're not going to win silverware this year. We know that. And I think, you do hear the likes of James McCarthy with Dublin saying it's a personal choice. Anybody wants to pull out can. and they're all gung-ho about it. But I think from a lot of other counties, they're looking at this congested championship, and they think might well be a risk in there, and they're questioning why they should go ahead with it. And I actually haven't heard a compelling argument for the championship to go ahead yet, because it will be a very hollowed-out husk of a competition. It'll be very unlike anything we've seen before. And the way I had always associate GA championship is with community. And like you're from Limerick, you would remember when Limerick won the All-Ireland. And I would say a lot of the stuff you remember around that isn't to do with the actual games, but it's the celebrations around it, the homecoming, etc. And when that's all gone, and when even players don't go back on a bus with the cup, they'd all have to travel in cars separately. I just think it's been seriously devalued, and I'd question whether it's worth going ahead, given the risk.
Guys, is that an important point, the fact that if we're looking ahead towards the week before Christmas and the possibility of major celebrations? Because I think all of us can probably realise, while it was really disappointing to see some of the scenes after the club finals, there is an element of human nature there that if someone, for example, breaks a long-awaited run for an All-Ireland Championship, like just pulling Mayo out of the sky there, it's going to be so hard to see that if Mayo were to win an All-Ireland Football Championship, that those fans will stay in their homes and not celebrate it. And I don't think any of us want to be looking at, videos on Twitter or pictures on Twitter of gatherings and people not social distancing. But it probably is a reality that is going to be happening.
Well, I think from my point of view, Kieran, I was coaching St. Bridget's to win the Roscommon Senior Football Championship a number of weeks ago. And there was 200 people allowed in at the time. And even though people tried to social distance, we won the county final against Porrick Pierce's, it gets very hard. And as the evening goes on, then people have a few drinks and it gets more difficult. So, if you think about it, if an inter-county team wins, irrespective of who wins the hurling or football, there will be celebrations in each of the individual clubs of the players of the county. And we talk with elite athletes. I mean, this week, hockey and my own sport, basketball, as elite athletes decided to cancel their leagues until further notice. So, GA are not professional athletes, and that's why there's a difference, if you look at the FAI and even the debacle we talked about that they got into last weekend in the Premiership and, in the rugby coming up. It's slightly different because they're professionals. It's a slightly different arena. The GA is an amateur situation, and I think the fact that the vote is not conclusive at 52, as I would say, against 48 with combination of 224s. I really think that this is not a good decision for the GA to try and squeeze this whole thing in. As COVID's getting worse, the GA situation is going to come under more pressure. Kieran made a point, Leitrim pulled out, and you'll have other teams won't be able to field their best players at different stages. I think to me it's too big a risk, and if I was involved, I'd be asking for it to be cancelled.
Yeah, it is, as you say there. Like, you would hope that inter-county teams are much more conscientious than the clubs, and they have more resources. They've got COVID officers that are working full time. They've got their medical staff. So you'd hope that the games can be played safely. What those fans do, that's personal responsibility. And those people that are going out and celebrating if Mayo won an All-Ireland, that's really hard to control, because they're going off their own bat, maybe, I don't know, to a house party, whatever, celebrating. But the players will want to play. And if you ask me, I would, back when I was playing rugby, I'd love to win a World Cup final and celebrate myself with a cup of tea and know that I've won. So there's a player's perspective as well, that they're competitive, that they want to play the games. But on the other hand, you have that responsibility to society that you don't want a big win to cause people celebrating and transmitting the virus around the community. But it's a difficult one, because are those players responsible for the actions of their fans and their supporters? So it's a really, really tough one. I think at the moment, the way the cases are going, it does seem, I suppose, unusual that you cannot do certain basic things, but then, a championship is starting off. So it's really difficult, because as you said, you have those players, 52% said it should go ahead, 24% wants improved, COVID restrictions. But those players are competitive at the end of the day and want to win, those that do want to play. But can they be responsible for the fans that are just not showing good behaviour? So it's a very difficult one to try and answer, really.
Mm-hmm. Kieran, you referenced obviously the fact that Leitrim had to forfeit a game today because they were waiting on a number of players to get results back. Is it important that we highlight that, Leitrim have done the right thing here now? Because I think myself and Will were talking about it on the news around that. There was a worry a few months back that if a situation like this arose, that, people might just be a little bit selfish and have too much tunnel vision about wanting to win an important game, because this was an important game for Leitrim as well. But they've come out, they've done the right thing, and they pulled their players away from it and they've withdrawn from the game because, as we've always said, there are more important things than the result.
Yeah, because that is no matter how much we love the GA or how much we love sport, I think it's important to put sport in its proper place. There's a far bigger picture at play here and all over the world at the moment. And I think, it's irritated me a bit that mental health has been weaponized, that people have kept bringing up that this will give a huge lift to the mental health of the nation. Where is that coming from? You have to be able to back up that with evidence and data. And I think it's a bit dangerous to throw that out there. And sometimes it's just because it suits somebody's agenda, they want the championship to go ahead, that they throw that out there. And I think that devalues the importance of mental health. The flip side there of what you were saying about Leitrim is I heard John Doyle the other day, the former Kildare footballer, and he was saying if he was preparing for an All-Ireland final with Kildare and he had maybe one or two of the symptoms, he thinks he'd keep quiet. And I think players are so tunnel visioned at times. That temptation will be there with big games, and it could be an issue down the road.
Mm-hmm. Kieran, just to develop that point, the league will finish and the championship will finish, and they could get away with it. Nobody could be infected and they could get away with it. But the risk of one person getting affected and dying from it is a risk. And for me, that risk is not worth taking. And I remember when I was a player, we just want to play. Your point about, when you have an injury, you really don't want to say you have a bad injury or you're struggling because you want to play. So you're trying to, as a player, you want to play. When you become a coach, you have a different view of those things. But you do want to play. But I said this a number of months ago, Neil, that, about the Olympics, when we were talking about the Olympics, I said, it's not worth one life. The All-Ireland Championship, the National League, or any sport, is not worth one life. And if there's a risk, and right now, COVID is out of control in this country. COVID is completely out of control in this country because of personal decisions that people are making and because of governmental inaction, in my view. We're out of control, and now we're trying to fit sport into it. And I'm saying this, it's not worth one life. And if there's a risk, we should take out the sport and say, let's not have any risk to anybody.
We just have a couple of minutes before I have to go take an ad break, but one final thing I might ask, and we can return to it as well after the ad break as well, is that I know hindsight is fantastic. Would it have been better to go into a situation where the inter-county game was scrapped for the entire year and they were able to keep GA, locally at a club level and, just develop some sort of made-up kind of regional league so that, as you pointed out, Kieran, the people who've been speaking about mental health and the impact that has, that you can still go out, you can still train and you can still play those matches, but there isn't necessarily going to be a huge amount at stake. And that negates the possibility of large gatherings before and afterwards of huge celebrations.
Well, I think because of the numbers we have now, I think there wouldn't be much chance of club stuff going ahead either. But
also as well, but also it means that if we had got to a stage where we are now, where things had got quite bad, that you could cancel these training sessions, you could cancel the matches, and you aren't necessarily losing a huge amount.
Yeah. No, it's a fair point, but I think an issue as well is that there was never an All-Ireland approach taken, and that's become, I think that became a massive problem over the last few weeks, especially because the numbers soared in the north, and then they soared in the border counties, Donegal, Cavan, Monaghan, and I think, sport in Ireland, largely outside of soccer, virtually all sport in Ireland is organised on All-Ireland basis. So there's so many things here that are organised on All-Ireland basis, and a major health issue like this should have been confronted on All-Ireland basis too.
Certainly is. Right, we will return to it after the break. Just want to keep you updated on the scores from elsewhere. 62 minutes played at Goodison Park, and it's Everton 1, Liverpool 1. Both of those goals scored in the first half. It was Sadio Mane who gave Liverpool the lead, and then Michael Keane equalising for Everton. And then in the Old Firm derby at Celtic Park, at half-time, Rangers were leading 1-0, and the latest score at the moment, 2-0 now to Rangers. Connor Goldson has scored his second goal. There's just over an hour played. He added to his first goal on 54 minutes. Since then, Scott Arfield and Scott Brown have had a couple of yellow cards between them as well. We'll be back after the break with more from our Saturday panel with Kieran Cunningham, Alison Miller and Timmy McCarthy.
The Saturday panel on Off the Ball.
I'll send an SOS to the world.
Our world cannot wait another minute. And while everyone has a part to play in the fight against climate change, we at EirGrid are stepping up too, safely making the national grid more resilient so that by 2030, 70% of Ireland's electricity can come from renewable sources. You can see how, with your support, we're stepping up to deliver a cleaner energy future at airgrid.ie.
Your new best friend. We know you want the very best for him, which is why our Leader puppy food contains all the essential nutrients for his healthy growth. Developed by vets, Leader for Puppies is made in Ireland using only natural ingredients. And this month, you can get any 2-kilogram bag of Leader puppy food for half price. Visit leaderdogfood.com to find out more. Leader, natural dog nutrition.
Wallet, nappies, baby, boobs, all set. You'll find expert advice on the convenience of breastfeeding at mychild.ie from the HSE.
Right now at the AA, we're offering €100 of car insurance when you purchase online and up to 10% off your quote when you buy AA membership. Who's got clever car insurance? For our best value car insurance, go online to the AA.ie. Terms and conditions apply. Minimum premium of €280 applies. New business policies only. AA Ireland Limited Trading as AA Insurance is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Into your busy business lives, I'd like to add one more item, but this one should prove useful. The Lumenia 2020 ERP head-to-head virtual event takes place on October 20th and 21st. It's the only event where you can see the latest ERP solutions from SAP, Oracle, Microsoft, Epicor and Sage, amongst others, compared side by side. So if you're implementing or updating ERP, book your virtual event ticket now at erpheadtohead.com.
We all need to keep an eye out for one another during COVID-19, especially our older and more vulnerable neighbours. Making sure no one feels overlooked during these tough times, Alone is doing important work helping older people across Ireland experiencing loneliness, ill health or poverty. But in order to keep helping, they need yours now. Please visit alone.ie/donate. Together, we can celebrate and connect older people in our communities with Alone. Supported by Guinness. Always drink responsibly. Visit drinkaware.ie.
Planning to give your office a facelift? Need help optimizing your workspace to meet the new health and safety guidelines? The team at Hunt Office Interiors can help with all of your planning, design and project management requirements. We provide a full range of solutions from office furniture and seating to state-of-the-art glass partitions. With ultra-modern showrooms in City West and Limerick, we'd love to show you what we're made of. To connect with our interiors team, simply email interiors@huntoffice.ie. Serving Ireland's business community for over 21 years. huntoffice.ie.
These days in business, it seems each step meets a new challenge. Chartered accountants are here to guide you every step of the way. Their expertise and experience allow them to see the bigger picture and help you make the right decisions. Choose a chartered accountant. Visit charteredaccountants.ie.
What makes me smile? Free stuff. Supermarket samples? Don't mind if I do. Hotel soaps and shower caps? Can't get enough of them. So I love Specsavers, because with my PRSI entitlement, I get a free eye test and a free pair of glasses from their €69 range. Ka-ching! That's something to smile about.
The whole world smiles with you.
Subject to eligibility. Book an appointment or find out more at specsavers.ie.
Don't you just love it when you find that special something that you weren't even looking for? Like that fab new coat to add to your winter wardrobe, or a new athleisure wear outfit. Because let's face it, you can never have enough athleisure wear. Liffey Valley has all your favourite brands and all your favourite retailers. So you'll find what you're shopping for and you'll love what you find. Shop it, love it. Liffey Valley. See liffeyvalley.ie.
GAA Championships are back on Sky Sports.
Now the stage and scene set.
Enjoy all the action.
Close control. Wonderful hands.
Feel all the drama.
A moment of magic.
Watch it all live.
So strong. What a finish!
Be inside the game with all live GAA games on Sky Sports Mix for all Sky customers at no extra cost. Sky Sports. Feel it all.
On 106 to 108 FM, on newstalk.com, on smart speaker, and on the Newstalk app. This is Newstalk.
It's 2:00. Good afternoon. I'm Emer McKeown. The Minister of State for European Affairs says Ireland's current COVID-19 restrictions are tighter than many other EU countries. Government leaders will meet this afternoon to consider moving the country to level 5 following a recommendation from NPHET. Such a move could see people being asked to stay within 5 kilometres of their home and only essential retailers would stay open. Minister of State Thomas Byrne says he trusts the best decision will be made.
It won't be NPHET. And it won't be the Cabinet Subcommittee that will make a decision. It's the government as a whole will make a decision. And I think that's right, and these things do need to be teased through properly. But at the moment, the restrictions are pretty strict at the moment in terms of the guidelines that are there, and we're strongly encouraging people to stick to them.
EU leaders will not be travelling to London on Monday to continue Brexit trade talks. Boris Johnson has said the EU needs a fundamental change in their approach to strike a deal. The Prime Minister has also told people in Britain to prepare for a no-deal scenario. Political correspondent of the Financial Times, George Parker, says Mr Johnson may be trying to force an agreement.
From a London perspective, there was a fear that they were going to drag on into November, and this is Boris Johnson, frankly, trying to bring the whole thing to a crisis point. And as you say, he told Michel Barnier, unless you've got a fundamentally different proposition to offer us, which respects Britain's position as an independent country, as he likes to say, then don't bother getting on the train.
A secondary school in Cork was told students in the care of a special needs assistant who tested positive for COVID-19 were not close contacts. The main secondary teachers' union, the ASTI, has expressed its concerns following the report in today's Irish Examiner. The SNA tested positive 2 weeks ago but had been teaching at the school just 3 weeks back. Sinn Féin's education spokesman Donncha O'Leary says he has major worries about the contact tracing regime for schools.
It's difficult to imagine how they would be not deemed close contacts, and I regret that this is not the first example I've heard from school environments. Sometimes the tracing is very slow and it might be 3 or 4 days after a positive case before they're informed.
The victim of a beheading in a suburb of Paris has been named as 47-year-old history teacher Samuel Paty. The suspect, an 18-year-old Chechen, has been shot dead, while 9 people have been detained by anti-terror police. The victim discussed images of the Prophet Muhammad with his pupils, which some Muslims consider deeply offensive. A man's been arrested and charged in connection with an aggravated burglary in Limerick. It happened on October 10th at a house at Kennedy Park in the city. A man broke into a house with what's thought to be a knife, threatened the 2 occupants and demanded money from them. He then assaulted one of the residents and fled the house with a handbag and some cash. Gardaí arrested a man in his 30s yesterday. He's due before Ennis District Court at 5 p.m. this evening. That's it for now. It's 2 minutes past 2.
Newstalk weather.
Thanks to the AA. Download the new AA app to request a roadside rescue and track the patrol right to your car.
A mostly dry day, but there will be passing showers, especially in the east and south. Moderate easterly winds, increasing fresh at times in the southwest. Highs temperatures of 11 to 14 degrees. And now we're up to date on News Talk.
The Saturday panel on Off the Ball.
Now you're very welcome back to our Saturday panel here on this Saturday's Off the Ball. Neil Treacy sitting in with you until 5 o'clock this evening. Just a reminder as well, the 20 by 20 campaign will be marking its conclusion next week and celebrating a transformative 2-year movement for women in sport. And everyone is invited to this virtual event that is going to be happening at midday on this coming Wednesday, October 21st. You can join legends of Irish and international sport like Martina Navratilova, Ada Hegerberg, Rachel Blackmore, Brian O'Driscoll, Sonia O'Sullivan, and even more guests as well. They'll be discussing and debating what future we want for women in sport in Ireland. Check out the Think It, Ask It hashtag. That is hashtag Think It, Ask It or the 20x20 social media channels for details on how to register. And OTB Sports is a proud partner and supporter of the 20x20 movement. Also as well, we have had another goal at Goodison Park. Liverpool now 2-1 up on Everton. Beautiful finish from Mo Salah. Caught it on the half volley from the edge of the box. So 73 minutes played, Liverpool 2-1 up there. We'll try bring you a report as soon as we can from that game at Goodison Park. And also as well, I think we do have that Everton goal ready to go. Yes, Shane Pennington from Goodison Park.
It's Everton 1, Liverpool 2 in the champions. Back in front here, courtesy of Mo Salah. It was a good cross down the right-hand side from Trent Alexander-Arnold, but terrible defending from Yerry Mina. He got his clearance all wrong, allowed it to drop to Salah on the edge of the box, and from 18 yards, Salah's half volley flew into the left-hand side of the goal. It's Everton 1, Liverpool 2.
Kieran Cunningham, Timmy McCarthy and Alison Miller are joining me on the Saturday panel for the second part of our discussion. Guys, there's probably just a couple more points on the GA before we move on to the week that was for the Irish soccer team and their disappointing results. A couple of texts in here, and one of them interesting. When foot and mouth was in Armagh in 2001, all football was aborted and it was a disease in animals. We have a nationwide disease for humans now, so the right thing to do is stop. We will get over it in the next few years. That is from Michael. And then this second text. The problem is players will feel pressured into playing, not forced into it. If there are 30 players on a panel and 28 want to play, but 2 of them don't, then those 2 players will feel the pressure from their teammates. That is from Colin in Limerick. I think that's a very interesting one, guys. How important a role do inter-county managers and probably captains or leadership committees on teams, how important a role do they have now over the coming weeks to make sure that there is no stigma put on players that want to sit out or don't feel comfortable playing, and that they can step aside and not, be worrying about is it going to be impacting their chances of being selected next year or the year after?
I actually read an article on The Independent yesterday with Cork captain Darren O'Sullivan about how they had a meeting and just, really reiterated that if a player wasn't comfortable playing, that it was perfectly fine, that we were there to support them and that it wouldn't go against them then if they wanted to play the next year. And I think, a player might feel pressure as that text came in, and all, I suppose, you would hope from the managers and the captain is that they can take away that pressure and let players, if they don't want to play, not have that kind of pressure there that they do have to play. You hope that there is conversations that can be had among the coach and the manager, and if any player is feeling uncomfortable, that they don't feel that pressure to have to play. It's a difficult one, but if teams can be open and have those conversations, hopefully those players aren't feeling under pressure to go out and play. Like we talked about players hiding symptoms, Sean Kavanagh said as well that he was afraid that players would hide symptoms like they did with injuries. You hope they have more personal responsibility. With an injury, you could harm yourself forever. But with this virus, you could be responsible for the death of someone in the community. So it's a lot more serious. So it's a difficult one when players feel under pressure. But if you have a good culture within the team, hopefully that pressure won't be there. But it's definitely not an easy one to answer.
I would say, Neil, that it will depend on who the player is. So let's just take, if it was David Clifford in Kerry or Kieran Kilkenny in Dublin, I'm not sure there'd be a lot of comfort and support for them not to play now. I think that would, if you're number 30 in the panel and you're not happy with playing, you're really not going to make a big difference. You get away with it. But if you're the star player like a Kieran Kilkenny or David Clifford, the pressure will be enormous on them. There's no doubts. And, like county managers and county boards will come out and say, we'll support our players and we'll do all that. That's all fine until it becomes your star player. And then you'll see the real challenge out that counties and individuals would have. Look, the foot and mouth is a very interesting text. I think it's a very interesting text. Animals were diseased and the football was stopped. We have humans here dying in this country, sadly on a daily basis or bi-daily basis, right? This disease, was dealt with in the summer and, we just didn't stay the course for another few weeks and probably squash it. But now it's rampant and, sport is, Kieran made a point earlier, sport is not that relevant. I love sport and Alison and we all love sport, but it's not that relevant when we have a public health issue. And I was listening to the news there, and Thomas Burns saying we're on top of it. We're not on top of this, And I just really believe that for amateurs to be playing sport in this environment is wrong.
Interesting. Yeah, you finished there with like amateurs playing sport, as you say. You're saying is wrong. It's interesting to finish on that part as well, Kieran, because we've had mixed messaging over whether it's amateurs or professionals who are going to be allowed play if we do move into level 5. Mixed messaging because Leo Varadkar on Today FM a couple of days ago, he said that the inter-county season would be gone if we move into level 5. Whereas last week, Tony Holan wrote that no matches or sports events would be permitted, exemption for professional, elite or senior inter-county or horse racing behind closed doors would be allowed under level 5. So do we actually kind of know where we stand with it?
Like, they're elite in the way they train and play and perform, but they're not professional in the sense that we can, like a professional rugby team or soccer team, can stay within a bubble or their team environment and keep them there for how long as they need to. Like, all these players have to go back the next day to work, and so yes, they're elite in terms of how they play and train, but they're not professional in terms of that's all they do. So that's, hugely problematic.
And Kieran, you were coming in there?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one, because if you asked me 3 or 4 days ago would the championships go ahead, I would have been very, very confident they would. This morning, I would think there's a very real chance it won't go ahead, because it's a constantly evolving and constantly changing situation. And I think of that, even that GPA survey, if it was taken today or was taken on Monday, I have a feeling that more players would come out, would be against going ahead with the championship, because I think the penny is dropping with people that we're back in a very serious situation, and that there has been a lot of pushback against the lockdown and against other restrictions we've had to deal with over the last few months, because people are cranky and fed up with it, and it's very understandable that they are. But at the same time, it's very necessary that we do the right thing, or numbers will soar. And I think it's hitting home now in people that for the sake of a 7-week championship, with nobody there, with the trophies being lifted in an empty stadium, with no homecoming, etc., and they're wondering, is it worthwhile? And just to go back very quickly to a point Timmy made, I agree with that around the David Cliffords and the Kieran Cunninghams or the TJ Reeds, how difficult it would be for them, the pressure they would feel to play. But I think it's also the case for a guy maybe who's just getting onto the team this year or just on the fringes of the team. And if they have concerns and they think, well, if I step away, will the manager hold it against me next year? At least the TJ Reeds and the Cliffords are secure in their spot. I think some other guys, there is pressure there, to just keep their head down and just get on with it.
Mm-hmm. Certainly is. Right, I think we probably need to get around to a couple more topics. Unfortunately, COVID dominated the international football break as well, and it threw up the logistical nightmare that is facing international football, because Dan McDonnell made a good point last week when we were discussing, I suppose, the first positive cases in the Irish camp, that the point of the bubble is that it's a bubble, and we've clearly seen that it's incredibly hard for those professional players to leave the bubble they've been in at their Premier League clubs or Championship clubs or wherever it is they're playing. You can't necessarily just start a new one on a Monday morning and have it for 10 days and then travel back again. Like, it has thrown up. We have another international break here and coming up in a few weeks' time. It doesn't seem like it's going to be called off or anything like that, or games are going to be moved. And it was just a complete nightmare.
Yeah. Jurgen Klopp signposted in the press conference before the international break. We talked about how they had things under control to an extent in the Premier League with all the bubbles put in place. But now players were flying all over the world, going to different countries, huge amount of different countries and different continents. Like, Ireland played in 3 different countries in the space of a week. Then the players went back to a different country again in England, another country in Scotland. One player went to Belgium, and Jack Byrne was in Ireland. So it's very hard when countries have different restrictions and regulations to keep on top of everything. And you've seen NFL and NBA players in America are among the best paid athletes in the world. There's been a huge amount of COVID cases within their camps. Cristiano Ronaldo is probably the best paid soccer player in the world. He's tested positive for COVID. So it's very, very hard to keep out. And what happened with Ireland over the last 2 weeks was extraordinary. But it might happen again in November. There's no guarantees it won't, because there's no sign things will improve significantly in that time period.
Timmy, Alison, your thoughts on it?
Yeah, well, well, first of all, my thoughts on the international is that it was the first time I really enjoyed watching Ireland because I thought we played great football.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that in a minute. We'll get to that in a minute.
I mean, I just think we played great football. We just can't score. We just don't. I mean, we had enough chances to score in every game, but we just don't have enough talent to score. You know, we don't have enough players. Not just in the forward sense, like like the Robbie Keanes or even Niall Quinn for all the things that he brought to us. He scored goals. But we don't have that. But I really enjoy the football. The farce about the false positive shows how difficult this thing is. I mean, there's no doubts. And, Kieran's point, they were back to 4 or 5 different countries, like when they finished with the bubble, the Irish team, they played in 3 different countries. I mean, the hardest thing that we have to realise as sports people, as those sports fans, and as people who talk about sport, is health. The world's health is under pressure. And until we get a vaccine and antibodies and antidotes, this is going to continue. And you referenced the NBA. I watched the NBA. They brought them all to Disneyland. So they brought the entire NBA teams for the playoffs into Disneyland, and they still had problems. The golfers in an isolated sport are still being tested positive. So as long as you have people mingling with people, you're going to have positive tests. And really, in the international sense, the value of playing international football, over the next few months is limited in reality. So, a bit like the GA, I don't see any value in playing international games, these nation cups over the next few months,
I do need to jump in here now and interrupt, guys. We have another goal at Goodison Park. Shane Pennington.
It's Everton 2, Liverpool 2. I told you there could be more goals in this one, yeah. And Everton equalised courtesy of that man once again, Dominic Calvert-Lewin. It came down the left-hand side with Luca Dean again to the byline, picked out a brilliant cross 6 yards out, and there was Calvert-Lewin to just head back across the goal and into the left-hand bottom corner of Adrian's net. It's Everton 2, Liverpool 2.
Alison, Timmy was speaking there just before we went and took that goal from Goodison Park about how it was actually quite enjoyable to watch Ireland again for a change. From your own experience as as an athlete, have you ever been in a situation where you have had a new coach coming in and pretty much has been ripping up the playbook and starting from scratch? And how long does it take for all that to bed together?
Yeah, it's a difficult one because I think the style that Ireland were playing, and I'm no soccer expert here, so but I mean, this could be a thing that could take a long time to change. I mean, you're never going to go and win games if you're trying to play hugely defensive all the time. So I mean, maybe it's necessary that all across the FAI that teams from underage systematically right up to senior are playing the same style of football, so that at least when maybe they get to senior level that they can play a more attacking style of football. We don't have the same amount of players, that there was in the days playing in the Premier Leagues and having huge success. But, I mean, you're never going to win games if you're hugely defensive. But, yes, I've had coaches where they've come in and they've completely changed the style of play. That takes time to do. I've had coaches that have had success, and sometimes it was the actually opposite. We were playing very well a style that suited the type of players we had, and that was what worked for us. And then you had a coach coming in maybe trying to play a more attritional style for the type of players. We would have had smaller players, and it didn't work. And it's hard for a player sometimes. If you believe in the changes, if you believe as a player in the changes, that's brilliant. And you'll row in behind that and you'll go with it. But if there's a bit of doubt and you don't feel that it's coming off, that's when the system can break down, and maybe not everyone's invested into that play. But I think I've certainly seen it with coaches coming in and, at provincial level, whatever, I've had coaches and you think, you're really, they've changed everything that you've ever done, and it takes time. And there can be success then if it works and everyone's on the same page and everyone's doing it. But if you have players that are, not buying into it, or, a small minority don't want to go it that way, that's when it's problematic. But, I mean, this could take a long time with this team and maybe it's not for the current team style of play, but maybe it's, for years to come. But they're definitely not going to get anywhere the way they were playing. So, I mean, they might as well try and play in a certain style, which is definitely better to watch. As I said, I'm no soccer fan or expert, but I mean, you can't always park the bus and have that style. I mean, it's not going to encourage younger players maybe to get into the game. They get into other sports. I don't know. It's a difficult one.
Timmy, I think one of the key messages there was like the players have to believe in the change. And it certainly does look like the players are believing in the change. Unfortunately, it looks like they're probably not actually just believing in themselves when it comes to the decisive moment in front of goal. If you're I'll put you in the coach, the manager's position, which you would have been used to down the years, how do you put that belief back into them?
Well, the first thing you've got to put in is that you've got to make them clear you're going to sustain doing this. And that's one of the biggest challenges I found when I came in, coaching at club level or international level, is that the players will look at you, and, especially if you're coming from outside, they're looking at you and they're trying to figure you out. Because first of all, the players are concerned about themselves. What does this mean for me as the player? Secondly, what does this mean for us as a team? So there's two concerns that they're trying to figure out, and they're trying to figure you out then in that sense. So what I would have said, as any team I've coached, is that these are the principles we're going to play by. And whether we win or not, we're going to play by these principles. And that's very important for the manager or coach to have that conviction. Because what I have found is that if you have that conviction, the players get that from you and follow you in that sense. What tends to happen, though, in some cases, like I see in the League of Ireland over the years, I watched a lot of League of Ireland over the years, and managers would say, we're going to play football. And then, like the other night, Randolph passes the ball from the goalkeeper out and we lose the ball. And then they said, forget the passing from the back, hoof it long. And that's when players find out, well, you don't really sustain it. So to me, as a coach or a manager, it was telling the players, these are the principles that we're going to play by. And we're going to stay with these principles through the good times and through the tough times. And what I found is players adjust, and even the players that Alison talked about who say I'm not really buying into this, their choices get limited because the team as a group buys into it, and they have a choice then. They either buy in and ultimately, or they go somewhere else. So I think what Stephen Kenny has done is exceptional. I think your point, Neil, is the players, look, we don't have the talent. Let's kind of keep this real. We don't have the talent at international level, particularly in the attacking and goal-scoring sense. So we're playing really nice football. We're creating nice chances.
It seems we have the talent certainly to get to a point in the game plan. It's just that final touch, though, isn't it?
It is, and look, think about it. If you had a Robbie Keane, Robbie Keane scored for fun, but if you had a Robbie Keane, playing in this team, he would get chances. He would take chances because that's what he's very good at. If you Cristiano Ronaldo, in our team, he would take the chances. We don't have that. Like, we have players who are in championship teams or in the bottom half of the premiership teams, and we're expecting them to score goals that they don't do every week for their clubs. Like, when you look at it, our strikers don't score week in, week out. For their clubs. Like, if you think of McGoldrick gets a goal and all of a sudden it's huge news if he gets a goal for the club, that's not going to win you games, particularly at the highest level. So, but we've got to stay with this. We've got to stay with this type of football and hope that we find, Adam Iada or somebody comes through, Troy Parrott, that, maybe could be a goal scorer in the next period of time.
Kieran, I'll leave the final word to you because we actually have running right out of time. There's so many topics that we're going to have to leave aside, unfortunately. But 2 more games coming up in November. If they are 2 bad results, at what point does the pressure actually arrive on Stephen Kenny? Because there has been plenty of goodwill up until now that we can see he's trying something new. But if the results continue to deteriorate, how much trouble is he going to be in?
Well, I don't think he'll be under any pressure from November, but I think he'll be given the World Cup campaign anyway, and it depends how that goes. Like, I think he deserves 2 full campaigns because a World Cup campaign is very hard to qualify out of. It's only 13 European teams go compared to 24 European teams going to the European Championships. But something that went under the radar a bit, Neil. Ireland have got 4 games, successive competitive games, without scoring for the first time ever. And if you look at some of the players that come in that Irish fans are looking to for goals now, Adam Iada, Aaron Connolly, Troy Parrott when he comes back fit, they're really learning their trade at club level. And, there's an expectation that they can deliver at international level, which is asking a lot of them. When you look at their age profile, like historically, Irish players on the national team are, making an impact from their mid to late 20s. Very, very few have made an impact in their teens or early 20s. Outside notable exceptions like John Giles, Liam Brady, Robbie Keane, Damien Duff. There's a handful there, but mostly it's slow burners. And, I think it's very difficult to change the style in an international team compared to a club team, because the time you're working with these guys is so limited. Like keeping half an eye on the Merseyside derby there, and you just see how well coached and well drilled teams are when they're working day on day. But international level, particularly with all the disruptions with COVID you had, and players coming in and being ruled out, it's really, really hard to change the style. So, as Alison says, it's going to take a time. And generally, for Ireland managers, things don't end well. So I hope for Stephen they do. I hope he's given 2 campaigns and he can turn it around. But I think it will take 2 campaigns at least.
Kieran, Timmy, Alison, thanks a million for joining us this afternoon on our Saturday panel, a review of the week. So much more we could have got through, but thanks a million for joining us.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're deep in injury time at Anfield now as well. 2-2 between Liverpool and Everton. Liverpool had the ball in the back of the net a moment ago, Jordan Henderson, but it was ruled out for offside on VAR. We'll have a full time from Goodison Park coming up for you in a couple of minutes.
Off the ball on Newstalk.
What do you do if plan A doesn't work out when it comes to your career? At what stage